Hello and welcome back to the Brain Bubble, where we talk about all things neuroscience. First of all, I want to say thank you for an absolutely amazing end to 2024. The channel has officially crossed 15,000 subscribers since its beginning in September. I am absolutely grateful to all the viewers and everyone who subscribed or interacted with the channel in some way. I'm constantly looking to improve on my current performance in the channel and just make my content much more engaging for the people. Anyways, this is a compilation of all the videos that you guys absolutely loved from this year. This is just a video where you will find all the good videos that I've made so far in one place, uninterrupted, well, except YouTube ads. So go ahead, enjoy, and I wish you guys a very happy and safe holidays and a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Brain Bubble, as you will be reminded across these many videos. But yeah, thank you. Enjoy. The artist by the name of Mr. Diljit Dosanjh made history in Vancouver, British Columbia by hosting the biggest concert by a Punjabi artist overseas in history. Over 54,000 people from all walks of life came to attend this phenomenon of a show at the British Columbia Place Stadium, where Diljit Dosanjh, on his The Illuminati tour, sang some of his fan favorites and incorporated multiple different components to his performance. But this isn't the effect of an overnight success arc. Over time, Mr. Dosanjh has very successfully globalized Punjabi music, with his collaborations with multiple foreign artists like Camilo, Anneli Choppa, and even Sia, and performances at some of the biggest stages of the world, including Coachella, his world tour, and even The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Not only this, many different Punjabi artists, such as Mr. Karan Aujla, Honey Singh, AP Dhillon, and the late Sidhu Moosewala, have successfully made a name for themselves, not just in India, but all over the world. But how has Punjabi music been able to reach this big an audience in such a little time? This is an extremely complicated question. And in this video, if you're going to a shopping mall, cafe, or a club, chances are that most of the music being played in the background will be Punjabi music. But Punjabi music reaching these levels of popularity was not always the case. In fact, going back in time, artists such as Surinder Kaur, Narinder Biba, Asa Singh Mastana, and others sang mostly what came to be known as Punjabi folk songs. And these helped pave the way for the rich and amazingly colorful Punjabi culture that exists today. Over time, however, continuous reproduction of music of the Punjabi folk kind for literal decades led to the new and upcoming Punjabi youth craving for something newer. This is something that will be a key trend in almost all of what we talk about in today's video. Let's take a closer look at how this works. This is your brain, and this is the area of the brain that processes what you hear. The fancy terminology for this area is the auditory cortex. If this part of the brain is repeatedly supplied with the same kind of music or auditory stimulus, phenomena called habituation and cognitive fatigue take place. Habituation is a process where the response to a repeated stimulus decreases over time. This results in cognitive fatigue, which is experienced by you in the form of boredom or simply being tired of listening to the same kind of music every day. If that was too complicated, think of it this way. Newer music makes your brain work more. The more work your brain does, the more engaged it becomes with the stimulus the work is being done on. So, in short, at some point, you get tired of listening to the same stuff. And that's what had happened to the youth and just general people of Punjab by the 1980s. This, thus, paved the way for the rise of the recently became well-known artist, Mr. Amar Singh Chamkila. Chamkila's music, as is well known, was unorthodox. and in many ways challenged the socially accepted construct surrounding Punjabi music at the time. His music was notorious for being extremely vulgar and talking about things that generally weren't considered culturally appropriate. The Netflix documentary starring Diljit Dosanjh on the life of Chamkila goes much deeper into his rise, but eventually Chamkila and his wife, Amarjot Kaur, were shot dead. The exact reason as to why Chamkila and his wife were killed isn't really clear, but it is still largely believed that he was killed by Sikh extremists of the time, who didn't agree with much of what his music had to offer. Perhaps it was this fear among the artists of the time to stay culturally appropriate that brought popular Punjabi music back to mostly folk songs and cultural music for the following couple decades. Popular artists in this time were of the kind of Mr. Gurdas Mann, whose contribution to Punjabi music is considered extremely invaluable because of his constant love for Punjab and Punjabi culture that is readily reflected in his music. His music has a very important place in Punjabi music and its history, but the progress of time had something else planned for Punjabi music in the coming years. With Gurdas Mann, Satinder Sartaaj, and other such artists producing Punjabi folk songs, the general culture of Punjabi music was becoming increasingly monotonic. Virtually, all the music from this time talked about the historic roots of Punjab and aimed to conserve the state's cultural identity. While there's absolutely nothing wrong with their efforts and music that holds a special place in the history of Punjabi music, the cultural development of Punjab was simply not in sync with this cultural preservation attempt from these artists. So, here, something really interesting happened, at least from a neuroscientific perspective. Starting in the 20th century and leading all the way up to present day, Punjab has seen extremely large amounts of immigration of its youth. Most of these people migrate to Western countries, with the most popular destinations being Canada and the United Kingdom, followed by relatively lower but still high immigration rates to even the United States. Over time, this immigration of people only increased because the Punjabi youth, seeing their friends and relatives succeed and find more opportunities overseas, too wanted to make a life for themselves in Western societies. So, over time, the influence of the West grew dramatically on this colorful part of India, and that changed everything. Earlier, we discussed the idea of cognitive fatigue and how it could have paved the way for the rise of Amar Singh Chamkila. However, in the early 2000s, the overall neural explanation for what changed the way Punjabi youth liked their music can be explained in two ways. This is an extremely important pathway of the brain called the mesolimbic pathway. This area, called the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, is the reward processing center of the brain. Research over time has consistently shown that new experiences or stimuli stimulate this area of the brain to release a neurotransmitter called dopamine. The mesolimbic pathway is thus called a dopaminergic pathway, and this release of dopamine in your brain causes newer music to feel a lot more pleasurable. A possible external explanation for this is that Punjab's youth simply started to think that music that's foreign to their land is a way of developing a social identity that could help them be up to date with society around them, which was being largely influenced by how the West was so great. It was exactly at this time in history that arguably the most impactful Punjabi artist of all time emerged onto the scene. It was the year 2006, and this was the year when it happened.
Available on iTunes.
The rise of Yo-Yo Honey Singh onto the Punjabi music scene is arguably the most impactful contribution a single star has made to an entire industry. With his rise, Punjabi music was no longer about conserving the cultural identity of Punjab or to talk about how the traditional stories and folk tales of Punjab made its culture so vibrant. Rather, Honey Singh incorporated Western beats and Western or modern styled music in his songs, filled with fast beats and an emphasis on themes such as partying, alcohol, women, and a general sense of westernizing Punjab. The pieces of the puzzle fit perfectly if we think about his rise from a neuroscientific perspective. And his rise left an impact that is now extremely deeply rooted in modern Punjabi music and culture. With that, the music that came out of the Punjabi music industry shifted dramatically. New artists who began to incorporate faster beats with rap-like bars in their songs began to consistently produce hits. While artists such as Gurdas Mann and Satinder Sartaaj were producing music at this time as well, the center stage was taken by artists such as Honey Singh, Diljit Dosanjh, Alfaz, and later on, Sidhu Moosewala, Karan Aujla, and A.P. Dillon. Very largely impacted by the immigration of Punjabis, Punjabi music was now being produced by Canadian singers, such as Karan Aujla and A.P. Dillon. This music was great, primarily because it catered to the neuroscientific direction in which the Punjabi youth was heading. And instead of producing an entirely new product, these artists incorporated the Punjabi language in songs that had faster beats, which retained some traditional aspects of music while completely changing the rest. As we know, music that challenges societal norms or introduces novel elements, such as foreign beats or unconventional rhythms, while retaining some parts of traditionality, may activate the reward circuitry of your brain more intensely, due to their novelty. Thank you for watching this video. The main aim of this channel is to dive into the history of things and attempt to neuroscientifically explain what could have happened at some of the turning points of history, among other equally interesting things. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button, and please subscribe for more crispy content like this video delivered to your feed every week by the Brain Bubble. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you next time. This is Abraham Lincoln. He's arguably the greatest president that America has ever had. His presidency, however, came to an end in the most American way possible as well. He was shot to death in 1865 by a Confederate and obviously slavery empathizer by the name of John Wilkes Booth. What's even crazier, however, is that Lincoln actually predicted his own assassination. His extremely famous assassination dream came to him on April 4th, 1865, which was precisely 10 days before he was shot. In his dream, Lincoln reportedly walked into the East Room of the White House and saw a coffin guarded by soldiers. When he asked who had died, a soldier in the dream replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." If that isn't crazy enough for you, meet this guy. This is Lee Hadwin, a British artist who has a condition which is by far the weirdest that I've ever seen in the broad field of neuroscience. Lee Hadwin has a condition where he creates intricate artworks entirely while he is asleep. What's even crazier is that he has no formal art training and no apparent skill or interest in art while he is awake. He produces impressive drawings and paintings during episodes of sleepwalking, and he has absolutely no memory of creating these pieces. He simply finds them in the morning, completed, without any recollection of him having made these paintings. If not crazy enough yet, one of Hadwin's paintings sold for roughly 12,000 United States dollars, while other paintings also reached high numbers. Now, you see, these are some extremely paranormal and out of the ordinary situations. In this video, we're not going to attempt to pretend like I know exactly what's happening in the brains of these people at the specific times mentioned, because frankly, neither I nor anyone else can truly figure out what's up here. Rather, what I'll attempt to do is I'll take the theories and information that already exists about dreaming and the science behind it, and attempt to explain what happened here using them. So without any further yapping, let's begin. Let's first talk about dreams, and what really happens in your brain when you see one. When I say dream, I'm referring to the dreams which are cohesive and complex storylines that you see and experience while you're sleeping. When we define dreams like that, what we're really talking about is a type of sleep called REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement sleep. In such a sleep, your brain tends to be highly activated. How do we know that? Well, a certain kind of technique called electroencephalography is used to determine the wave pattern of the brain. I won't go too much into detail because that will probably freak you out. But for now, just remember that brain activity tends to be high when you're dreaming. This brings us to the theories about dreaming. These are kind of like scientists playing the role of the detective rather than just trying to explain things in a dry fashion. That is why I know you're going to love this, so listen in. The first theory that we'll be looking at is the least complex one. Scientists J. Allen Hobson and Robert McCarley developed a theory called the activation synthesis theory, which is a very simple and frankly innocent way of explaining dreams. It simply says that dreams are the brain's way of making sense of random neural signals within the brain. What they're really saying is that the brainstem produces random electrical signals, and these signals also randomly activate different areas of the brain except the prefrontal cortex. All this means is that you're still thinking of random stuff while you're dreaming, but you're not making any sense out of it, because the logical area of your brain that's supposed to be doing the sense making is simply not active. So, your brain literally takes these random signals, synthesizes or consolidates them, and creates a narrative. Why this theory is widely accepted is because, for the most part, people's descriptions of dreams tend to involve multiple different themes that shouldn't work together in a logical way. For example, last night, I dreamt of a unicorn distributing candy to kids on Christmas Day. These themes shouldn't work together logically, but activation synthesis suggests that they do in dreams. However, in our two extremely crazy examples of Lincoln and Hadwin, this theory doesn't really do much to explain the paranormal nature of what happened. So in our chart, we'll give this theory a paranormal explanation rating of a solid 0.5 for both extreme scenarios. Now, one of the most widely accepted theories about dreaming is that it brings together our memory. This is called memory consolidation, which is basically a big boy term for saying that during REM sleep, the brain reorganizes and processes information gathered throughout the day. This allows short-term memories to be transferred into long-term storage in the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. Dreams tend to show little fragments of recent experiences that you may have gone through. For example, it's Halloween time, and I see kids get candy all around. That could explain the unicorn giving candy to kids. By doing this, you could potentially even argue that dreams strengthen connections related to learning, and could potentially strengthen your memory a ton. However, putting my stupid dream on the side, if we view Lincoln and Hadwin's dreams from this theory, it starts to make some sense, at least for Lincoln. This is primarily because up until 1865, Lincoln had already been through multiple assassination attempts and threats, such as the Baltimore assassination plot in 1861, and the frequent death threats he would get during his presidency. Point is, he had prior experiences and memories of assassination attempts, and a consolidation of those memories at such a crucial point in 1865, when the North had won the war, could explain that very specific dream. However, that's still pretty far-fetched, and in the case of Hadwin, there simply is no prior experience or skill that he developed in the arts in any way. Taking that into account, we'll give this theory a paranormal explanation rating of a solid 4.5 for Lincoln's dream, and a rather disappointing 0.5 for Hadwin's dream. Now is where things get interesting. So far, we have taken the most commonly understood neuropsychological theories related to dreaming and have tried to relate them to paranormal situations of Lincoln and Hadwin. What we'll now do instead is take a look at lesser known theories and rarer conditions of the human brain during sleep, in order to explain these paranormal situations. Firstly, we have the threat simulation theory. This theory suggests that human beings have been evolutionarily trained to simulate real-world threats in dreams. The basis of this theory is that our ancestors who were able to practice escaping in real-world scenarios of nomadic or violent lifestyles tended to be better prepared for real-world threats. While such threats don't really exist today, the theory suggests that since these ancestors were better prepared to live, natural selection made sure they lived, thereby passing down this evolutionary training to future generations. Now, the reason why this theory isn't as widely accepted is that there doesn't yet exist a clear neurological description of how such threat simulation would occur in the brain during sleep. On top of that, it applies to some very specific situations, wherein the dream involves a specific threat. While it definitely isn't uncommon for people to experience stressful or threatening situations in their dreams, it definitely is not the norm. In Lincoln's situation, however, this theory fits perfectly. This is also supported by his own past experiences that could have triggered this evolutionarily developed aspect of his thinking. That's exactly how the paranormal nature of Lincoln's dream is highlighted. It is supported by a rather unsupported theory. While the neurological nature of this theory is yet to be proved, we give it a paranormal explanation score of a solid 9 for the Lincoln dream. The Hadwin situation, however, is explained by what many neurologists and researchers believe to be a case of parasomnia. Parasomnias are sleep disorders involving abnormal movements, behaviors, or emotions that occur during sleep. In Hadwin's case, the neurological basis of even a parasomnia doesn't fit perfectly. The only somewhat plausible neurological explanation of this is that his motor cortex and memory systems operate independently of his self-awareness, something that I don't believe I've frankly ever heard of in my life. Not only that, these systems operate with such a high unconscious specificity that they're able to produce paintings and art worth thousands of dollars with absolutely no prior experience on Hadwin's end. Considering the unrealistic nature of this explanation, we'll give this theory a paranormal explanation rating of about 6.5. Dreams can be absolutely bizarre, and as we saw in these two cases, no matter how big a body of evidence exists in science that can explain major themes and majorly seen experiences, there always are some paranormal situations where even science's arms are unable to reach. That doesn't mean that we can't explain them. Oh no. We definitely can, but just aren't able to yet. Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell me in the comments what the craziest dream you've ever had was. If this video gets 500 likes, I will definitely share my craziest dream with you in the coming time. I'll warn you though, it's really freaky. Subscribe to the channel as well. In just 4 videos, we're nearing 2,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you enough. We're on our way to cracking that 10K number. So, subscribe. And maybe I'll give you a free cookie if you do. Apple. Apple is the biggest company in modern society. With a valuation of about 3.3 trillion United States dollars, it is definitely the most valuable company to exist today. Their level of dominance in the world is absolutely crazy. In the United States, Apple's share of the smartphone market is about 56%. This means that 56% of all smartphone users in the United States own an iPhone. Outside of this, their market shares are insane when it comes to the computer market, the laptop market, and even the smartwatch market. However, what is somewhat surprising is that Apple does not have the most quote-unquote advanced technology in their devices. In fact, many Android smartphone companies such as Samsung, OnePlus, Vivo, Oppo, and even Google have smartphones that exceed the technological capabilities of iPhones. For instance, Samsung makes better displays that have higher resolutions and refresh rates compared to Apple. The OnePlus 11 and Xiaomi 13 Pro have much higher battery lives than the newest iPhones. And the Galaxy S23 Ultra has a much higher camera quality and detail compared to the iPhones. Yet, none of these smartphones even come close to Apple's dominance in the smartphone market. So, why is this the case? Why is Apple winning when it objectively does not have the best product to offer? We'll be looking into this topic in this video. So let's dive in right away. Apple, as is famously known, was founded by Mr. Steve Jobs, Mr. Steve Wozniak, and Mr. Ronald Wayne in 1976. The company was initially established to sell personal computers, with their first product being the Apple I. This was a computer that was hand-built by Steve Wozniak. Roughly 3 decades since its founding, Apple's focus was increasingly becoming personal computers, with their star product called the Macintosh, or simply the Mac. However, arguably, the biggest contribution that was made by Apple to the world was the iPhone. The iPhone is Apple's most popular product today, and it was arguably the primary reason why Apple was able to grow to be the brand that it is today. The iPhone was launched on June 29, 2007. Until this time, smartphones weren't exactly a commonly existing product like they are today, which was why the iPhone marked a revolutionary shift in mobile technology, combining a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator into one single device. Another decade went by, and after 10 years of the iPhone X was announced. This was probably the biggest leap forward from the previous generations of the iPhone, because of the removal of the home button. The following generations of the iPhone, as you probably know, built on this design further and further. Over time, however, there are some common themes that can be seen everywhere about the overall form of an iPhone, from its design to how it is perceived by people in society. Let's look at this further. Compared to its Android competitors, the iPhone's external design offers some really smooth, rounded corners, with very smooth edges as well. While I'm not saying that these don't exist in Android phones, the iPhone is notoriously more round at its corners. Not only its exterior, but the widgets, apps, icons, etc. of the iOS have some visibly rounded icons, which are noticeably more rounded than those in the Android world. This actually aligns with human neurological preferences for curved shapes. Research indicates that humans tend to favor curved over angular shapes. This is actually coming directly from a study published in the journal Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, which discusses how curved lines are perceived as pleasant or somewhat normal due to their prevalence in nature. This is thought to be rooted in evolutionary adaptations, where sharp angles might have been associated with danger or something threatening. Now, I'm not saying that rounded corners are a better design than the somewhat sharper Android smartphones. However, what I am saying is that there exists evidence that suggests that such a design is more favorable to the average human brain than sharper corners. You individually might think differently, but we're talking about averages here and not individual cases or outliers. Next, the brain's reward system plays a huge role in how the iPhone is perceived by society. See, it is a well-known fact that iPhones are on the expensive side of things. However, iPhones tend to be priced in a category that can be referred to as affordably expensive. Let me explain what this means. For example, let's say you want to go out there and buy some candy. Your budget is $10, and when you go into the store, Twix costs $6, and Snickers costs $4.50. If we were to look at this from a simple economic problems perspective, it obviously makes sense to buy the $4.50 candy, because you save more money doing so. Now, say you buy the Snickers, take it home, and put it in a candy jar and want to distribute it for Halloween. It comes to your attention, however, that everyone in your community actually bought the $6 Twix, and you're the only one who ended up buying the $4.50 candy. Just to save that $1.50, you are now the outlier in your community, and the kids coming to your house notice this. How would that make you feel? While candy might still not be significant enough for some of my viewers to care about, if you look at bigger investments like smartphones, it tends to become a lot more significant for a lot more people. See, when something is the most expensive thing of its category, it neurologically tends to have an award attached to it. In Apple's case, it's actually somewhat of a status symbol, which is exactly the reward that is attached to the company's name. Now, the neurological reward system that is involved here is the ventral tegmental area, with the nucleus accumbens. Dopamine is released heavily when such a reward is achieved by someone in the VTA, and is ultimately received by the nucleus accumbens. The prefrontal cortex does some of the higher level evaluation of the reward, and its impact on the person in question. All of this neurologically reinforces the idea that buying an iPhone for the first time is considered to be an accomplishment of status by a lot of people around the world. We then come to the Apple ecosystem. This ecosystem is by far the star of the show when it comes to Apple's uniqueness. The ecosystem is directly created by the different services that connect different Apple devices together, like iMessage, AirDrop, FaceTime, Files, Safari, and now iPhone mirroring on the Mac. By doing so, Apple increases cognitive ease, because tasks that would require services like WhatsApp, email, etc. on Android devices can be seamlessly accomplished with utmost convenience on Apple devices. This is by far the most powerful tool that Apple uses to build brand loyalty, and increases your likelihood of experiencing a higher degree of loss aversion when you decide to leave the ecosystem. Leaving Apple's ecosystem may mean losing access to exclusive services like iCloud, the App Store's Apple-specific purchases, and FaceTime. This potential loss creates a neurological resistance to change, as the brain prefers to avoid what feels like giving something up. In other words, if you own 6 Apple devices and suddenly decide to switch one of them to Android, suddenly all of what tied that 6th device to the other 5 is lost. It's almost like a missing piece in the puzzle. With the path that Apple is on today, with Tim Cook leading the company to eternal greatness and market dominance, it can confidently be said that Apple is here to win. Their emphasis on preserving aspects of their phone that makes it the greatest, rather than just diving into experimenting with the very Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. This fight will by itself go down as one of the biggest events of this entire decade in the history books. This boxing match achieved unprecedented and jaw-dropping viewership numbers. Netflix reported that the event peaked at 65 million concurrent streams, with an average minute audience of 108 million live viewers globally, which made it the most streamed sporting event in history. Not boxing match, sporting event in history. The fight itself, however, as many of you who watched it would agree, was definitely not even close to the hype. The entire reason why the fight gained so much attention was definitely because of Iron Mike Tyson's return to boxing. I don't have anything against Jake Paul, and I'm sure he had a serious role to play in making this fight happen. But the reason why the fight gained such unprecedented attention was because of Mike Tyson's return to the ring. Despite him being 58 years old, he was still the favorite to win this fight in the minds of many. And yet, he lost in a rather miserable fashion, which really made it a very disappointing sporting event for the fans of the sport, once it concluded. But that is exactly the point of this video. Why on earth were the expectations of a 58-year-old Tyson so high? Why did his return to the ring against the likes of Jake Paul gather so much attention? And most importantly, what specifically made the fight so disappointing to watch? So, let's talk about Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Now, I'm not a boxing expert. I just like to talk about and closely study how people's behaviors and brains work. So, in the case of Paul versus Tyson, the absolute foundation that we have to establish is that boxing is a young man's game. In fact, most professional sports tend to be dominated by younger men. The entire concept of retirement from professional sports exists to provide players an opportunity to step down when they feel that they're simply unable, or simply too old, to compete with the raw, fresh, young talent. Now, I know that some players like Cristiano Ronaldo and LeBron James are changing the definitions of too old in their respective sports, but we're yet to see someone of that caliber in boxing. With that established, let's now talk about the fight itself. See, what Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson sold to the world was not a boxing match. It was the battle of a hero and a villain. Iron Mike Tyson is regarded as one of the two greatest fighters to have ever lived. His legacy is unparalleled in boxing, and just in my personal experience, I know people who consider Tyson to be their god. They quite literally worship the man. Looking at his legacy, it is very understandable why this is the case as well. Mike Tyson's entire rise in boxing was catalyzed by Cus D'Amato. Tyson quickly rose to the rank of the heavyweight champion of the world in 1986. The name Mike Tyson had the word invincible attached to it, because he was simply unbeatable. It was then that he was given the title baddest man on earth by the world. While he had a couple of falls in his career, his legacy is that of a true beast in the ring. His lethal uppercut, mindset, words, and more importantly, incidents in and out of the ring made him a beast. For instance, when Tyson fought Evander Holyfield for the second time, he quite literally bit his ear in the ring. Holyfield was severely hurt by this as well, and while Holyfield won that fight with Tyson being disqualified and even banned from boxing for a year, Tyson definitely came out the scarier man that night. Incidents such as this one, among other things, definitely significantly added to Tyson's reputation of being a beast. He also avenged the loss of his idol, the great Muhammad Ali, by defeating Larry Holmes in the most ruthless way possible. All of these accolades, incidents, achievements, and events combined paved the way for the legacy of Iron Mike Tyson, making him our hero in Paul vs. Tyson. Jake Paul, on the other hand, was the villain in the fight. Now, I'm sure most of y'all know why this is the case. Jake Paul has a very questionable and interesting history. His list of controversies go on, and all of them have made him the target of a lot of online hate. His boxing record is impressive if you look at the numbers, but the people behind those numbers tell the real story. I won't dive into his history too much here because frankly that'll take an entire video by itself. The main point here is that Jake Paul, being the subject of so much online hate, trolling, and negativity, was definitely perceived to be the villain of this fight. This is the first piece in our puzzle of the Paul vs. Tyson fight. The brain has a natural tendency to associate individuals with archetypes or symbols based on their traits and behaviors. Archetypes like the beast or the king are universal, culturally ingrained patterns of thought and emotion stored in our semantic memory. Mike Tyson's aggression and incidents such as the ear biting in the ring evoke primal imagery that the brain maps onto these archetypes. This is part of the default mode network, which integrates personal experiences and cultural knowledge to form symbolic associations. In contrast, Jake Paul's controversial life events, like the It's Everyday Bro controversy, definitely associated him with the villain's archetype in the brains of the audience. Secondly, something that we also have to establish here is that people want their heroes to win. Apart from the general dopamine release and the reward processing center of the brain that this may cause, there's actually another psychological concept I want to talk about here. See, for any fight in the world to be watched by so many people, either the people really want the hero to win, or they simply want the villain to lose. This is something called Schadenfreude, and it also largely involves the reward processing center with the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Basically, people tend to derive pleasure from the loss or failure of a villain. This isn't them being haters, it's them being human. This fight killed both these birds with one stone. Iron Mike Tyson, with his unbeatable legacy, was to make a return to boxing as the hero of everyone, to humble the arrogant, cocky villain, Jake Paul. This was an amazing idea, because you're simply hardwired to want your heroes to win and villains to lose. But for the biggest hero in boxing to be the biggest villain in the new generation? Yeah, this idea was always going to be successful. However, time settles everything. Fight night came, and reality hit all of us really hard. Mike Tyson was not invincible to his own age. No matter his legacy, he was, objectively speaking, a 58-year-old man fighting a 27-year-old man in a boxing ring. And as I said in the beginning, boxing is a young man's game. And so there it was. It left all of us disappointed because of a concept called cognitive dissonance, which I've talked about in my Messi versus Ronaldo video. Iron Mike Tyson's loss was a mismatch between what the audience wanted and expected versus what actually happened. This is a mental discomfort, as the archetypal encoding mechanism of the brain that painted the picture of Tyson as an invincible hero was shattered. This discomfort was phenotypically expressed as disappointment, hate, questioning the legitimacy of the fight, and even calling the fight rigged by a lot of people. Anyways, that wraps up my video. This was definitely one of my favorite videos to make, as I had been following the fight closely like many of you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'd love it if you subscribe for more juicy, crispy content coming your way. Like, share, and comment under this video as well. If you comment about something that you'd like to see on the channel next, I'll randomly select one, and that will be reflected in one of the upcoming videos. Thanks for watching The Brain Bubble. I'll see you next time. Peace. India and Pakistan. Beyond just their cricketing rivalry, those words hold some intense significance. India and Pakistan are two countries in Southeast Asia that have perhaps the most violent historical foundings and relations ever. See, before the two countries existed, they were actually just a single country called British India, and as the name suggests, this unified India-Pakistan territory came directly under the jurisdiction of the British Crown. However, the independence movement of India, fueled by some very big names in history, such as Bhagat Singh, Madan Lal Tingra, Swatantra Veer Savarkar, Subhash Chandra Bose, and of course Mahatma Gandhi, eventually brought history to a turning point in 1947, when India became a free country. However, this turning point was arguably the worst outcome the freedom fighters could have wanted, as with India, Pakistan was created under the jurisdiction of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. As history went on, India progressed to become one of the biggest economic and workforce powerhouses of the world, with exceptional military and space industry and relations as well. Pakistan, however, did not even come close to such international greatness. Despite this vast difference in overall progress, the two countries still have extreme levels of hostility towards one another. Rather than just talking about the history of the conflict, I'll actually go into the brains of it today as well. So let's dive right in. India and Pakistan were born out of blood. Simply put, the two countries were divided across the border of modern-day Kashmir, Punjab, Rajasthan, and Gujarat in 1947 under the command of the British Crown. It was instructed to both the countries that all independent kingdoms across the territory of British India were free to choose which country they wished to be a part of, or to simply not be a part of either. Out of all of them, Kashmir became the most important. With millions crossing the borders during this division, which is now called the Partition of 1947, communal violence erupted, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. This was the foundation of animosity, with both countries emerging from independence with deep wounds and mistrust. Immediately after independence, Pakistan-backed tribal militias invaded Kashmir, prompting its Maharaja to accede to India. Indian forces intervened, leading to the first war between India and Pakistan. Eventually, the United Nations intervened to establish an LOC, or a line of control, leaving the region divided but contested. Then again, in 1965, Pakistan attacked Kashmir by sending infiltrators to Indian-administrated Kashmir to incite rebellion. This led to full-scale war that ended in a stalemate. Pakistan's east portion, which was all the way across India bordering China, began to see some freedom-fighting movements as well, wherein India supported these movements by intervening militarily. Eventually, Pakistan surrendered, creating Bangladesh. Another major blow to Pakistan came in 1999, when India won the Kargil War. A pattern that you'll notice here is that the Indian forces were repeatedly showing their dominance over Pakistan. In fact, to this day, Pakistan has not won a single military conflict when fighting India by themselves. Because of this, Pakistan had to resort to the backing of terrorist organizations, such as Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, to make a statement across the border with terror attacks, as seen in the 2001 Indian Parliament attack, the attacks of 26/11 in Mumbai, the Uri attack, and the Pulwama attack. The name of the game in this conflict was always Kashmir. Pakistan backed the liberation of Jammu and Kashmir from India, and had a major role to play in the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from Kashmir in 1990s. See, technically, Kashmir was a part of India. However, Article 370 of the Indian Constitution gave Kashmir a special status, which somewhat gave Kashmir autonomy to make their own constitution, have their own flag, and have low levels of involvement from the Indian Parliament. Even today, Pakistan-backed militants and infiltrators are thought to exist in India, in universities, colleges, support groups, communities, etc. Their aim is to brainwash Indians to create a movement against India altogether. The conflict between India and Pakistan stems largely from deep-seated group identities rooted in religion, culture, and historical trauma. The medial prefrontal cortex helps form the sense of self in relation to a group, while the amygdala reinforces emotional attachment to that group. This leads to strong in-group bias, where people feel loyalty and pride to their own group, which is India or Pakistan, and hostility towards the out-group. The communal violence during partition and the ongoing hostility are underpinned by this neural wiring, which drives individuals to see the other side as fundamentally different or threatening. Events like the partition of 1947 and subsequent wars have left long-lasting neural imprints on collective memory. The amygdala and hippocampus encode traumatic experiences, making fear responses automatic when individuals are reminded of historical adversities. For example, mentions of Kashmir or Pakistan-backed attacks can trigger hyperactivity in the amygdala, leading to aggressive or defensive reactions. This creates a cycle where each side interprets the other's actions as inherently hostile, further entrenching animosity. The reward pathways in the brain, mediated by dopamine, also play a role in the conflict. Nationalistic behaviors, like supporting one's army or waving a national flag, activate the brain's reward system, creating feelings of pride and euphoria. However, these same pathways can drive extreme behaviors when individuals are radicalized. Propaganda and militant ideologies exploit this mechanism, providing a dopamine reward for aligning with a cause, such as opposing the other country. This neurochemical process makes extremism and terrorism psychologically rewarding for some individuals. On top of this comes the modern media. Modern media amplifies conflict by hijacking neural systems responsible for emotional regulation. The amygdala reacts to fear-inducing news or propaganda, while dopamine reinforces consuming content that aligns with one's existing beliefs, aka confirmation bias. This creates echo chambers, where individuals only hear narratives that validate their hostility towards the other side. In the India-Pakistan context, sensationalized coverage of attacks or military escalations perpetuates fear and aggression, reinforcing entrenched divisions. Despite the hostility, the brain's ability to rewire itself, or neuroplasticity, offers hope for reconciliation. Exposure to humanizing stories, cultural exchanges, or dialogue can activate the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thinking and empathy, reducing amygdala-driven fear responses. Programs that foster understanding and collaboration between Indians and Pakistanis could tap into this capacity for change, slowly altering perceptions and reducing the cycle of aggression. This requires sustained efforts to counteract the neurological mechanisms that perpetuate division. Thanks for watching this video. I know it was a lot of material condensed into a single video. I'm thinking of doing a whole series on this topic. Let me know if you'd want to see that. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. See you next time. Peace. Cricket. Cricket is the second most popular sport in the entire world, with approximately 2.5 billion fans worldwide. It's a beautifully crafted game that combines themes of athleticism, speed, hard work, and sportsmanship into one. Over the years, cricket has produced some of the greatest legends in sports history, including Ricky Ponting, Vivian Richards, Brian Lara, Sachin Tendulkar, and of course, Virat Kohli. Despite its massive global following, cricket is still a growing sport, with its governing body, the International Cricket Council, or ICC, working hard to expand the game to new international audiences. One major step in this direction was hosting the most recent T20 World Cup for the first time in the United States, attracting hundreds of thousands of new fans to the gentleman's game. Cricket's inclusion in the 2028 Olympic Games, right here in my hometown of Los Angeles, California, is another exciting milestone that could further boost the sport's visibility. However, there's a bittersweet side to cricket's global story. While the sport boasts 2.5 billion fans, most of them are just concentrated in South Asia, specifically in countries like India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. India and Pakistan, in particular, are by far the most fan-heavy nations, with Bangladesh following close behind. Out of these regions, cricket is facing challenges. In some countries where cricket used to thrive, such as Great Britain, Australia, and New Zealand, younger generations are shifting toward faster-paced sports like basketball and football. While cricket hasn't disappeared entirely from these regions, it's clear that the emphasis on cricket as a cultural cornerstone is fading. So, why is this decline happening? And under these circumstances, how will new American audiences respond to the game? That's the topic of today's video. Let's dive right in. In today's world, we're seeing an increasing emphasis on speed and instant gratification, thanks to platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels. These platforms deliver bite-sized content every 15 seconds, training users to expect quick, constant stimulation. This has led to a global decline in attention spans, particularly among the youth who are most engaged with social media. In this fast-paced environment, sports have also become entertainment-driven. Basketball and American football thrive because they deliver frequent, high-intensity action that aligns with the brain's craving for dopamine. A 2015 study showed that quick dopamine spikes from fast-paced activities and experiences help sustain attention and engagement, which is a key factor in these sports' popularity. Here's where cricket faces its first challenge: its slow pace. Even the shortest format of the game, T20 cricket, involves a total of 120 legal deliveries per innings, with many resulting in dot balls, which are balls where no runs are scored. This slow and gradual style of play can feel sluggish, especially when compared to sports like basketball. While T20 is much faster than traditional test matches, which can last for days, it's still relatively slow in comparison to the 1.5 to 2 hours of action-packed gameplay in an NBA game. Let's also consider the sheer volume of basketball games. The NBA features 30 teams playing nearly daily for 9 months a year, creating countless opportunities for fans to witness thrilling, close games. In contrast, the IPL only has 10 teams playing for 3 months a year, limiting the number of high-stakes matches that fans can watch live. The second challenge for cricket lies in capturing new audiences. The concept of neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to adapt and form new neural connections, explains why exposure to certain sports during childhood can shape lifelong preferences. Early exposure to baseball, basketball, and football in American culture ingrains neural familiarity with these games' rules and rhythms. Cricket, however, is rarely played in US schools or communities, making it harder for Americans to form the neural pathways needed to understand and enjoy the game. Without this early cultural and neural imprinting, cricket faces an uphill battle in the United States market. Cricket also struggles to evoke the deep tribal identity that sports like the NFL or NBA have cultivated over decades. Sports tap into the brain's social circuits, such as the medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction, creating emotional bonds with teams and players. Cricket's weak cultural roots in America mean it lacks the rivalries and shared history that drive these bonds. Without this foundation, it's harder for cricket to activate the same social bonding pathways in the American brain. Cricket also faces what I call the shielding effect. To the average American brain, cricket is a foreign concept. The brain, already accustomed to a healthy balance of established sports, resists accepting something entirely new. On top of this, there's an unfortunate perception, partly fueled by Hollywood movies like Slumdog Millionaire, that cricket is a third world sport, associated with countries like India and Pakistan. This stereotype creates additional barriers to cricket's acceptance in the United States. So where does this leave us? Cricket is undoubtedly a beautiful game with a rich history and passionate fans. But in the fast-paced, entertainment-driven world of today, it faces significant challenges in expanding its reach, particularly in the United States. While cricket's inclusion in the Olympics and other international efforts are steps in the right direction, the road ahead is steep. With that said, I'd love to be proven wrong. As a big cricket fan myself, I hope the sport finds a way to thrive in new territories. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Brain Bubble. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. Imagine that for 2 seconds. And I'll be doing something special for you all once we hit that milestone. See you next time. Peace.